What if you stop caring and nothing changes? What if they move on like you never mattered? And what if holding on so tightly is the very thing pushing them away? Let's find out what really happens when you let go. Because in this video, we're breaking through the lies, exposing the truth, and taking you to the very heart of both possible outcomes. No sugarcoating, just the raw, unfiltered reality you need to hear. If you're ready to uncover the truth, shatter the lies, and face the reality of what happens when you finally let go, hit that like button and subscribe now. This is your moment to step into clarity and reclaim your power. Don't miss it. So, here's the gut punch. What if you cared even more, gave your all, and still they drifted away? All that energy, love, and effort you poured into them becomes nothing more than a distant, fleeting memory in their mind. Gone, just like that. And what if, oh, this one stings? What if you've been living a lie all along? What if everything you've been taught to believe about overcaring, that it's the way to prove your worth, the way to be loved, was nothing but a trap? A cycle that keeps you chasing, bending, breaking, while they sit back, taking you for granted. Confusing, isn't it? The more you care, the more they seem to drift away. It feels like the harder you try, the more distant they become, as if your effort to hold them close somehow pushes them further. You pour your heart into texts, calls, plans, and moments of kindness, hoping they'll see your value. But instead, they start to take it all for granted, acting as though your presence is a given, not a gift. And then, the moment you decide to care a little less, to step back and protect your energy, fear creeps in. It whispers in your ear. What if this is the moment they decide you're not worth it? What if your absence doesn't matter? What if they forget you altogether? It's that voice in the back of your mind that tells you stepping back might push them away for good. What if they find someone else who gives them what you couldn't? What if they move on like you never existed? It's terrifying, isn't it? That delicate balance between wanting to be valued and being afraid that if you stop trying so hard, you'll lose everything you've worked for. And yet, here's the irony. The fear of caring less comes from the very same place that drives you to care too much. A need for validation. A desperate desire to prove your worth to someone else, to make them stay, to feel like you're enough. But deep down, you know the truth. You've felt it in your bones. No amount of overcaring ever made someone love you more. And no amount of stepping back has ever made someone who truly cares disappear. That fear, that voice, it's not your intuition. It's the conditioning you've been taught your whole life. The belief that love has to be earned, that you have to keep proving yourself to be worthy of someone else's affection. And that's the lie society wants you to believe. That your value is tied to how much you give, how much you sacrifice, how far you'll go to keep someone else happy, even at the expense of your own peace. But here's the truth. Caring too much doesn't make them stay. It makes you fade away. Today, we're tearing down the lies. We're stepping into the uncomfortable truths. Because whether you care too much or too little, the real problem isn't how they feel. It's how much of yourself you're giving away just to feel enough. Man is disturbed not by things, but by the views he takes of them. That's what Epictetus said. And it's time to change the view you've been taught, that your worth is determined by someone else's response. So here's the challenge for today. Are you ready to stop caring too much? To take back the energy you've been pouring into someone else and redirect it inward? Because when you do, everything changes. Not just how they see you, but how you see yourself. Now, folks, take a deep breath and let's anchor this moment with an affirmation. Write this in the comments below. No more fear of losing you. Say it, type it, own it. Stay tight, because what's coming next is going to unravel the myths, reveal the truths, and transform the way you think about over-caring. Let's dive in. Number 1. Do they come back? The question that haunts you. Will they come back when I stop caring, or will they simply move on without a second thought? It's the question that keeps you up at night, isn't it? The one that echoes in your mind every time you think about letting go. That fear, that uncertainty, it's like a shadow following you, whispering, what if they never notice you're gone? What if they move on like you never mattered? What if this silence is the end? Let's get real, right here and right now. Look in the mirror and tell yourself the truth. You've been chasing, haven't you? Pouring your energy into someone who doesn't match your effort, running after their attention, hoping for scraps of their affection. And what has it gotten you? Nothing but sleepless nights, overthinking texts they didn't reply to, and that gnawing feeling in your chest that you're somehow not enough. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. This isn't about them. It's about you. You've made yourself unattractive, not because of how you look, but because of how desperate you've become. Desperation isn't sexy. Neediness doesn't inspire desire. And constantly being available, constantly giving, constantly proving yourself. It makes you seem like you don't value your own worth. And why should they value you if you clearly don't value yourself? Let's hit this hard. When was the last time you prioritized you? When was the last time you put your own peace, your own happiness, your own energy above their half-hearted attention? Because here's the reality. Every time you chase, every time you care too much, you're sending a loud, clear message. I need you more than I need me. Do you think that's attractive? Do you think that's how you build desire, respect, or love? No. That's how you become a backup plan, a convenience, an option. And deep down you know this. You felt the sting of being taken for granted, of being there whenever they wanted you, only to be ignored when you needed them. Now, here's the good news. You don't have to stay this way. You don't have to live in this cycle of over-caring and being overlooked. There's a way out, and it's simpler than you think. Stop caring. That's right. Stop caring so much. Pull back. Let go. It's not about being cold or cruel. It's about reclaiming your power. When you stop chasing, when you stop giving everything away, you do something incredible. You make yourself scarce. And scarcity is magnetic. Think about it. What's more valuable? A diamond you see every day, lying on the sidewalk, or a diamond locked in a vault, rare and untouchable? People don't desire what's easy to get. They desire what feels rare, what feels unattainable. And that's what you become when you stop caring too much. When you pull back, when you focus on yourself, you're no longer the person they expect to always be there. You're no longer the one who jumps at their every call, who drowns in their silence, who lives for their crumbs. Instead, you become the person they start to miss, the person they start to wonder about. Why aren't they texting me like before? Did I lose them? Why am I thinking about them so much now? That's the shift. That's the power of stepping back. When you stop caring, you give them the space to notice your absence. And trust me, they will notice. It might not happen right away, but the void you leave behind will grow louder with every passing day. And here's where it gets interesting. When they come back, and they will, it's not because they suddenly changed. It's because you changed. You stopped making them the center of your universe. You stopped tying your worth to their attention. You became someone who respects their own energy, and that's attractive. Because let's face it, confidence is magnetic, independence is irresistible, and when you stop chasing, you're sending a message that screams, "I'm worth more than this." So stop caring so much. Stop chasing. Let them feel the weight of your absence. Let them sit in the silence you leave behind. And while they're busy realizing what they've lost, you'll be busy becoming the best version of yourself, stronger, happier, and untouchable. Now, take a deep breath and write this in the comments. I am rare. I am worth it. Say it, type it, own it. This is your moment to stop proving yourself to them and start proving your worth to yourself. Stay with me, because what's coming next will show you just how powerful you can be when you reclaim your energy. Now, let's dive in, and let me show you exactly how this unfolds, step by step. Before we get into it, if you have any questions, any thoughts swirling in your mind, drop them in the comments. I'm here for you. And if everything I've said so far resonates and hits home, make sure to press that like button below. It's a small action, but it helps spread this message to more people who, just like you, are looking for clarity and strength. Let's get into it. Number 2. The wake-up call, when your absence hits them like a ton of bricks. The warmth you take for granted is the cold you'll miss the most. Imagine a cozy fireplace on a freezing winter night. You don't think much of it when it's burning bright, filling the room with warmth and light. You sit close, basking in its comfort, taking it as a given. But the moment the fire goes out, the chill creeps in. At first, it's subtle, a slight drop in temperature. Then, as the cold seeps deeper, you realize just how much you depended on that fire to keep the darkness at bay. That's exactly what happens when you stop over-caring. Your attention, your energy, your love. It was their warmth, their comfort zone. They didn't have to think about it because it was always there. But the moment you pull back, the chill of your absence starts to creep in. At first, they don't notice. People rarely recognize what they've been taking for granted right away. Life feels the same on the surface. They go about their routines, oblivious to the void that's beginning to form. But then it hits them. It's not an explosion. It's a slow, unsettling realization. Maybe they reach for their phone to check a message that isn't there. Or they scroll through social media and see your name missing from their notifications. They start to notice the silence, the absence of your consistent care, the little things you always did to hold the connection together. And here's the part they won't admit to themselves at first. They feel off balance. Your overcaring was the foundation of the dynamic they relied on. It made life easier for them, filled emotional gaps they didn't even know existed. But now that foundation is gone, and they're left standing in the cracks, wondering what happened. Human nature is predictable. We rarely value abundance until it's gone. Your care was like that steady fireplace, always burning, always warm. They didn't realize how much they depended on it until the cold started to settle in. And that's when the questions start creeping in. Why haven't they reached out? Did I do something wrong? Have I lost them? The silence becomes deafening, and it forces them to face something they've been avoiding. How much they've been taking you for granted. They see the imbalance they were comfortable ignoring. They begin to realize that the warmth they thought was endless can, in fact, disappear. Now, let's talk about you. Because this part is hard. Pulling back isn't easy when you've been the one holding everything together. The silence feels unnatural. Your mind starts spinning. What if they don't notice? What if they don't care? What if I'm making a mistake? But let me tell you something important. This isn't a mistake. This is growth. This is you stepping out of a dynamic that was draining you and reclaiming your energy. Their reaction, whether they notice quickly, slowly, or not at all, isn't the point. The point is that you're finally prioritizing yourself. And when they do feel it, and trust me, they will, it won't just be the absence they notice. It'll be the value of the presence you once gave. Because the warmth they took for granted has become the cold they now feel. So, take a deep breath and anchor yourself in this moment. Write this in the comments below. I choose my peace. Say it, type it, own it. Show yourself, show them, and show the world that your energy isn't something to be taken for granted. And stay with me, because this is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when they start questioning themselves, and that's coming next. Let's dive deeper. Number 3. The reflection phase, when the mirror reveals what they've lost. Without your energy, they're forced to confront their own shortcomings. Your silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They reflect exactly what's there, no matter how uncomfortable it might be to look. When you stop over-caring, when you pull back, you leave them with a reflection they can't avoid. At first, they don't realize it. Life carries on as usual, or so they think. But silence has a way of amplifying everything that was once hidden beneath the surface. It's like walking into a quiet room and suddenly hearing the echoes of all the things you tried to ignore. The unresolved issues, the unreciprocated energy, the imbalance, they're all laid bare. And for the first time, they're left to face it without the safety net you once provided. Let's break it down with a real-life example. Imagine a partner who always leaned on you for emotional support. Whenever they had a bad day, you were there. When they felt uncertain, you reassured them. When they doubted themselves, you built them back up. They got used to it. Your care became their crutch. But when you stop over-caring, when you pull that crutch away, they stumble. Suddenly they're left to carry the emotional weight they once passed on to you. They're left with their own insecurities, doubts, and challenges. And they have no choice but to confront them. At first, they might feel frustrated, even resentful. Why aren't they there for me anymore? But as the silence lingers, that frustration turns inward. This is the reflection phase, the moment when they start seeing things they've avoided for so long. They begin to realize how much they relied on you, not just for emotional support, but for validation, comfort, and a sense of stability. It's uncomfortable for them, like looking at a photograph of yourself that captures every flaw, every imperfection. Here's the hard truth. People rarely notice what you give until they have to live without it. It's not malicious. It's human nature. When someone is always there, always giving, it's easy to take their presence for granted. But the moment you step back, your absence becomes the loudest thing in the room. And here's where the real shift begins. As they reflect, something else starts to stir. An unsettling realization that they might have underestimated your worth. They start replaying moments in their mind. The times you supported them, the times you gave without asking for anything in return, the times you were there when no one else was. It's like losing a key and suddenly realizing how many doors you can't open without it. They begin to see you not as someone who was always there, but as someone who brought immense value to their life. And that realization hits harder than they'd like to admit. Metaphorically, it's like a garden they stopped tending because they assumed it would always bloom on its own. But now, as the flowers wither, they see the effort you poured into keeping it alive. They see the care, the patience, the energy, and they can't help but wonder what they've lost. This reflection phase is where their pride starts to crumble. The questions they've been avoiding come rushing in. Did I take them for granted? Was I too selfish? Have I lost someone who truly cared about me? And here's the kicker. They don't just miss your presence. They miss the version of themselves they felt when they were with you. The version you uplifted, supported, and believed in. But let's be clear, this isn't about manipulation. This isn't about making them feel bad. It's about creating the space for clarity, both for them and for you. Because while they're reflecting on everything you brought to their life, you're stepping into your own power, realizing that your worth has never depended on their recognition. So, take this moment and make it yours. Write this affirmation in the comments. I am the mirror of my worth. Let it remind you that your silence, your absence, your choice to step back is not weakness, it's strength. And stay with me, because what happens next is where the real transformation begins. The void you leave doesn't just stir their thoughts, it changes the entire dynamic. Let's dive deeper. Number 4. The void, when they feel the chill of your absence. What they once dismissed as constant is now painfully scarce. Your absence creates a void they can't ignore, even if they try. It's not just about you not being there. It's the emotional vacuum that follows. Like a room that suddenly loses its warmth, the chill is immediate and undeniable. At first, they might try to brush it off, telling themselves that life hasn't changed much without you. But slowly, that cold begins to seep in, and the difference becomes impossible to overlook. Think of it like losing electricity during a storm. When the power's on, you don't think about it. It's just there, making everything work. But the moment it's gone, the silence of a lifeless room, the flickering candles, the loss of connection, it all feels glaringly obvious. Your absence is that power outage, and they're left fumbling in the dark, trying to adjust to the emptiness you've left behind. Here's the thing about people. We don't realize the value of what we have until we no longer have it. When you were over-caring, always available, always giving, they became desensitized to your presence. You were there, constant, dependable, easy to reach. But now you've pulled back, and scarcity has taken its place. Scarcity is powerful. It rewires how we think, how we feel, and what we desire. What was once abundant and overlooked suddenly feels precious and unattainable. It's human nature to crave what we can't easily have, to want what feels out of reach. And now, that's you. Your absence forces them to reflect, to sit with their thoughts in the silence you've left. And that silence, it's deafening. It amplifies everything they've ignored, the care you gave, the moments you were there when no one else was, the ways you made their life easier without expecting much in return. At first, they might try to resist. They'll tell themselves they don't need you, that they're fine without you, that your absence doesn't matter. It's pride, plain and simple. They don't want to admit, maybe not even to themselves, that something feels off, that something is missing. But pride can only hold up for so long. Because the void you've created isn't just about physical absence, it's emotional. It's the lack of warmth, the lack of support, the lack of the attention they've come to rely on without even realizing it. Here's the truth. When you stop caring too much, you don't just remove yourself. You remove the comfort they once felt. It's not punishment. It's clarity. And the longer they sit with that void, the clearer it becomes to them just how much they lost when you stepped back. They'll start to feel it in small ways at first. Maybe they scroll through their messages and notice the silence where your texts used to be. Maybe they encounter a problem and instinctively think of you, only to remember that you're no longer there to offer advice or a listening ear. It's those moments of realization that begin to build, piece by piece. And the scarcity you've created, it shifts the dynamic entirely. What they once dismissed as constant is now rare, and rarity commands attention. But here's where things get messy. Before they reach out, they'll try to fight it. They'll wrestle with their pride, with their guilt, with their regret. They'll hesitate, replaying moments in their head, wondering if they made the wrong call, wondering if you've moved on. It's a battle between their ego and the undeniable truth that they miss you. This resistance is where their internal conflict starts to take over. They might act indifferent on the surface, but beneath that facade, they're questioning everything. And the more they resist, the stronger the pull becomes. The void doesn't go away. It grows, demanding their attention, forcing them to confront what they've lost. But let's be clear, this isn't about manipulation. You're not creating this void to control them. You're simply stepping back to prioritize yourself, and in doing so, you're allowing them to see what they've taken for granted. The void isn't your responsibility. It's theirs to reckon with. So, take a moment and remind yourself of your worth. Write this in the comments below. I am the difference they can't ignore. Say it, type it, own it. You're not just someone to fill their time or their needs. You're the warmth they'll miss the most, and the void they'll feel the deepest. And stay with me, because the next step is when things really start to shift. Let's see how this tension leads to their moment of reckoning. Let's keep going. Number 5. The battle within, wrestling between pride and regret. Pride is the mask of fear, and regret is its shadow. One hides, the other lingers. When your silence grows louder than their ego, the battle begins. They might not show it, but inside, there's a storm brewing, a clash between their pride and the regret they can no longer ignore. It starts subtly, with fleeting thoughts they try to dismiss. Why haven't they reached out? Should I say something first? Did I mess this up? But those questions, the ones they push away, only come back stronger. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing they need to jump, but terrified of what's below. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place, between the suffocating weight of their pride and the growing ache of regret. And let's not sugarcoat it. Pride is stubborn. It'll convince them to hold their ground, to wait you out, to pretend they don't care. But here's the truth. The longer the silence stretches, the heavier it becomes. Imagine trying to hold a heavy book out in front of you. At first, it's manageable, but as time passes, your arm starts to tremble, your muscles ache, and the weight becomes unbearable. That's what pride feels like. They try to carry it, to act unaffected, but with every passing day, regret seeps in, whispering in their ear. What if they've moved on? What if I've lost them for good? And this is where the real turmoil begins, because pride doesn't just mask fear, it amplifies it. Every unanswered question eats away at their confidence. Every day of silence feels heavier than the last. It's a mental tug-of-war, and neither side is willing to let go. Here's where it gets interesting. Regret is quiet, but it's relentless. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It sneaks in during the quiet moments, in the dead of night, when their mind is unguarded. They'll replay old conversations, overanalyze your last interaction, and start scrolling through your old photos or messages, looking for clues. Should I text them? What if they don't respond? What if they're happier without me? It's like a storm building on the horizon. At first, it's just a few clouds, easy to ignore. But then the wind picks up, the skies darken, and before they know it, they're standing in the middle of a raging tempest. And storms, my friend, don't last forever. Something has to give. For some, it's pride that breaks first. They'll swallow their ego, reach out and hope for a response. For others, regret becomes too overwhelming to bear, and they'll reach out not because they want to, but because they need to. But let's talk about what's really happening in their mind. Their pride tells them, if I reach out, I'm admitting I was wrong. I'm giving them power. But regret counters with, if you don't reach out, you might lose them forever. They're paralyzed. Pride says, stay silent. Regret screams for action. And this inner conflict isn't just about you. It's about them confronting their own behavior, their own shortcomings, their own failure to value you when they had the chance. And here's the ironic twist. While they're wrestling with this battle inside, you've already begun to move forward. Your silence, your absence, your decision to stop over-caring, it's forced them into this storm, but it's also freed you from it. But will they reach out, you might wonder? In most cases, yes, because silence isn't just an absence, it's a mirror. It forces them to reflect on everything they've done, everything they've taken for granted, and everything they're now afraid of losing. But when they do reach out, it won't be with fireworks and grand gestures. It'll be subtle, a hesitant text, a casual "hey," or maybe even a comment on an old post. It won't seem like much, but behind it lies the weight of everything they've been carrying. Here's what you need to remember. Their return isn't about validating your worth. It's a byproduct of you finally standing in your power. So take a moment, right now, and remind yourself of this. You are not defined by their regret. You are defined by your decision to prioritize yourself. Write it in the comments below. I am my own priority. Say it, type it, own it, and stay tuned, because this storm they're facing is just the beginning. What happens when they break? What happens when their pride finally gives way to regret? That's where the real transformation begins, and we're diving into that next. Let's keep going. Number 6. The breakthrough, when they finally realize your worth. Sometimes you don't realize the value of what you have until it's gone. Imagine stumbling upon an old, forgotten treasure map buried in the corner of a dusty attic. For years it sat unnoticed, its worth hidden beneath layers of neglect. But one day, as you brush off the dust, you realize what it is, a guide to something priceless. Suddenly, what seemed ordinary becomes irreplaceable, and now you can't stop thinking about it. That's exactly what happens when they finally realize your worth. It doesn't hit them all at once. No, it creeps in, subtle, uninvited, and relentless. It might be triggered by a random memory, like a conversation you once had, or the way you made them feel during a tough moment. Or maybe it's a bout of loneliness, when they look around and realize the emotional void that's been left in your absence. It starts small, like a seed of thought that plants itself in their mind. No one else gave me what they did. No one else cared the way they did. And as that thought takes root, it grows. Slowly but surely, they begin to reflect. They replay moments in their head. The times you were there for them, the way you always checked in, the sacrifices you made without them even asking. What once seemed ordinary now feels irreplaceable. Your constant care, your effort, your energy. It was the stability they didn't know they needed. They start to see the imbalance in the dynamic, but this time, it's not you who's feeling it. It's them. And this realization, it's not just uncomfortable, it's undeniable. Think about it. When you were overcaring, you were their safety net, their emotional anchor. They might not have consciously acknowledged it, but they leaned on you. And now, without that anchor, they're drifting. It's like trying to find footing on shaky ground. Every other connection feels shallow compared to what you gave. Here's the kicker. They'll try to fight this feeling at first. Pride gets in the way. They'll tell themselves, "I'm fine without them. I don't need anyone." But pride is fragile, and the truth has a way of breaking through. Because the truth is this: what you brought to their life wasn't replaceable. It wasn't something they could just replicate with someone else. And when they finally accept that truth, it's like a floodgate opens. The memories, the regrets, the what-ifs, they come rushing in. Why did I take them for granted? Why didn't I appreciate them when I had them? Did I lose something I can never get back? It's a humbling moment, a moment where they're forced to face the reality of what they've lost. And here's where the breakthrough happens. The realization that they had something valuable, something rare, something they might never find again. This is the point where what seemed ordinary becomes extraordinary in their mind. It's like stumbling upon that treasure map and realizing its worth. They see what they had all along, but fail to appreciate. And now, they can't ignore it. But let's pause for a moment and talk about you. Because this isn't just about their realization, it's about your transformation. While they're sitting in regret, you've been growing. You've been reclaiming your energy, rediscovering your worth, and stepping into the version of yourself you were always meant to be. So, when they finally come crawling back, and trust me, they will, it's not because you begged or chased or overcared. It's because your absence forced them to see what they were blind to before. And now, the ball is in your court. But here's the beauty of this moment. It's not about revenge or proving a point. It's about standing firm in your worth and deciding what aligns with your peace. Their breakthrough is just that, theirs. Yours has already happened. Take a deep breath and let this moment sink in. Write this in the comments. I am my own treasure. Say it. Declare it. Show the world that your worth was never tied to someone else's realization. It was always within you. And stay with me, because we're not done yet. The next step? Deciding how to handle their return and what that means for your future. Let's dive deeper. Number 7. Crawling back when they can't ignore the void anymore. And then it happens. It starts small, just a ripple in the silence they've grown used to. Maybe it's a tentative text, something casual like, "Hey, how've you been?" Or maybe it's a comment on an old social media post, a way to test the waters without diving in. They don't say it outright, but every word, every gesture is weighted. Behind that text, behind that call, lies the realization they've been avoiding. I messed up. I let something valuable slip through my fingers. You see, by this point, they've swallowed their pride. They've bitten the bullet. All that time they spent convincing themselves they didn't need you, that they were fine on their own. It's gone. The void you left behind has grown too loud, too undeniable. And now they're back, hoping you'll let them in, hoping to reconnect with the warmth they once took for granted. But here's where it gets tricky. Because for them, this isn't just a reconnection. It's a redemption arc. They want to make it seem like everything can go back to the way it was, like no time has passed, like the imbalance never existed. But for you, this moment isn't about them. It's about you. This is the moment you stand firm in your worth and decide what aligns with your peace. Let's be real for a second. You've spent enough time chasing, giving, and bending over backward to keep them in your life. And now, after all that effort, they're the ones knocking at your door. But here's the truth. Their return doesn't define your worth. It doesn't mean you weren't enough before, And it doesn't mean you need to drop everything to welcome them back. What it means is that they've finally felt the consequences of taking you for granted. It's like a well they've come back to drink from, a well they once drained without a second thought. They're thirsty now, realizing just how vital that source of care, attention, and energy was to them. But here's the question: are you going to refill it? Because that choice is entirely yours. This isn't about revenge or holding a grudge. It's not about playing games or trying to teach them a lesson. This is about you standing in your power, knowing your worth, and deciding whether their presence adds to your peace or disrupts it. And let me be clear, just because they come crawling back doesn't mean you owe them anything. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them forgiveness, and you certainly don't owe them the same version of yourself they once knew. That version of you is gone. The one who overcared, overgave, and overextended. They don't exist anymore. Now, this is where your strength is tested. Because it's tempting, isn't it? To let them back in without boundaries, to fall back into old patterns, to feel validated by their return. But you're not here to repeat history. You're here to create something new, whether that means redefining the relationship on your terms or walking away entirely. Let's use a metaphor here. Imagine a bird that once lived in a cage. It was comfortable there, always fed, always cared for. But one day the cage door opened and the bird flew away, finding its freedom. Now, that same bird wants to come back, not because it loves the cage, but because it misses the comfort. The question is, will you close the door again, or will you let it fly in and out on its terms, knowing you've built a stronger foundation for yourself? This moment isn't about them, it's about you. Their return is a reflection of the void you left, not a measure of your value. You've already proven your worth to yourself by stepping back, by reclaiming your energy, by refusing to overextend. So here's what I want you to do right now. Take a deep breath and write this in the comments. I am enough. Say it, type it, own it. Let this be your reminder that your worth has never been tied to their validation. You've already shown yourself the power you hold. So, let's wrap this up. What happens when you stop caring too much? You don't just change how they see you, you transform how you see yourself. This journey isn't just about them realizing your worth. It's about you rebuilding your confidence, your peace, and your sense of self. When they come back, and trust me, many will, it's not about going back to who you were before. It's about moving forward as someone who knows their value, sets boundaries, and doesn't overextend for anyone. Rebuilding starts with you. Your energy is precious, your time is priceless, and your worth? That's non-negotiable. So here's the takeaway. Focus on your growth, your passions, and the life you want to create. Whether they stay or go, whether they notice or don't, your happiness comes from within. You've taken the first step, and that's powerful. Now, let's anchor this transformation with an affirmation. Write this in the comments below. I rebuild for me. Say it, type it, and let it remind you that this journey is yours. If this message resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more insights on Stoicism, relationships, and self-growth. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You might just change their life too. Thank you for watching, and remember, your worth has always been yours to define. Keep growing, keep thriving, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong.